Right. Good day, ladies. How are we?
Good, look. So good.
Good. Right. So, Women and Men Against Child Abuse is embarking on a new venture at the moment for the 16 days of activism. And what we're doing is we're recording a set of YouTube clips and a podcast series so that we can assist in terms of our advocacy with a way of educating the public around issues that face children and particularly child protection. So we are starting our 16 days campaign talking to two of our very hard-working social workers who have come in from the clinics in Boksburg and Alex, and we have Pearl and Tendai with us. So Pearl, I think I'm going to start with you. When you and I chatted, the thing that we said we wanted to highlight to the public is we wanted to highlight the fact that being in the system, the criminal justice system for a child when they've been abused, is actually very difficult. Tell me from your experience, when children first come to you, when they are first referred, they haven't made police statements yet, they've just come to you as the first person they're talking to, what is the experience like for that child coming to the clinic?
Some are scared, some are confused, not knowing what they are there for, and some don't show emotions at all, but when we talk, that's when they explain or express themselves.
Okay. And how do you make them feel comfortable at the clinic? Because we call our kids clinics Kidz Clinics because we are there so that we can make sure that the children specifically feel comfortable, because our clients are the children. So how do you move them from those places of being scared to a place where they feel comfortable and they feel that we are there to care for them?
By creating a safe space and being on their level, that's how we make them free. Even our offices are in a space whereby the child can feel that this is home. It's a homely environment. So that's how they are free.
Brilliant. So let's move to Tendai now. So Tendai, let's go to the next level then. So the young people come to you and now they have to make statements to the police, or you are asked to do assessment for the court or the police. What is that process like for children?
It's a very scary for the children because now some of them, they won't even know the reason why they came to the clinic in the first place. Their parents, mostly they will tell them, we are going to see a doctor. Then you explain the process. Some of them, they'll be very scared and not wanting to talk, saying, but I already told the police officer what happened. Then through engaging and creating a safe space, they will start narrating the incident. Yes. Okay.
So you mentioned that they also must go for medicals. What, in your experience, is the thing that they are most afraid of?
I think they are most afraid of, in my instance, I'm not going to talk about the medical because I don't do the medicals. First, when the case is reported, remember, they go to the court, not to the court, to the police. Mm-hmm. Then they take a statement. When they come to me again, even though I have created a safe space, they feel like, so I'm going to be asked the very same thing again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it seems as if they don't want to keep on being asked about what had happened.
Because having to repeat what happened to you all the time, that's traumatic in itself because they're having to relive that trauma every time they tell it.
Yes. Okay.
So let's go back to Pearl. So Pearl, when the children are involved in this process, what do you do as a clinic to support the children through this very difficult process of the police and the courts and the medical examinations? What support does the clinic provide?
We start by empowering the parents, mm-hmm. and then we talk to the kids and telling them what is going to happen throughout the process, and that eases their fears. And then, as we have engaged the parents, we also
No, take your time. It's a very tough topic to talk about.
Okay. As we have engaged parents and the kids at the same time, it makes it easy for them to understand what is going to happen throughout the process. So by giving them information, I think that is what makes them easy.
Okay.
Yes.
So now let's go to you going to court. Because remember when I worked in Alex with you, you did a lot of assessments on children for court. So what are you assessing for? And when you go to court, what is your experience as a professional like going to court?
Going to court, it's hectic. Even if you're a professional, you don't know what you're going to meet there, what kind of, more especially lawyers, how are they going to treat you? In some cases, they even treat you like you are the one who committed the crime. So when you get to court, there's trauma of waiting. You wait there. There are so many cases that are being discussed. At times, the case is postponed for some reason that is given by the court. So being in court is strenuous.
So you also mentioned to me around the beginning of this year, and you said for the first half of this year, you were in court almost every week, but you never once gave evidence. What led to you not giving evidence at all, even though you were there every week for 6 months?
There were different reasons. Sometimes the prosecutor was not there, or the load shedding was the main reason at some point, or there's a new lawyer that has been appointed by the perpetrator, so the lawyer will say, I'm familiarizing myself with the case. So those were the reasons, yes. Or sometimes the intermediary is not working, or the person who's supposed to interview the child was not there. So those were the challenges that I've experienced.
And every time that you are appearing, the children are coming to court as well, and it's also getting postponed for the children.
Even the parents were there. They will have to ask from work that I won't be going to work today. I have to attend court. And then when the case is postponed, so they end up losing interest in the cases.
Okay. So let's go back to Tendai. So Tendai, what is your experience in Boksburg around the amount of convictions you get after this complicated court process?
I feel that the amount of convictions we get, they are not fair. For example, let's say a child was raped, you find out they get a 10-year imprisonment. For me, I feel it's unfair. I feel maybe it should be something like 25 years, and if it's a rape case. And sometimes you find out that they will tell you that the docket is still in for decision. Okay. Yes.
So now, in those cases, does the state ask anybody to give evidence in aggravation of sentence, or do they just proceed without having any expert evidence before the court?
I'm not aware, because some of the cases I'm not even allowed, I'm not even called as a social worker to testify. You will just hear that, okay, this case, the perpetrator got 10 years imprisonment. Yes, so
okay.
I don't know if there will be other experts that will be also testifying.
I saw you were shaking your head, Pearl. So let's hear from Pearl about what's happening in Alex.
I'm concerned about the delays, Luke. For instance, now we are in 2023, but there are still cases that were reported in 2018 or even 2016 that are still in court. You'll find out the child hasn't testified yet. Maybe the child at that time was still a minor, and now she or he is an adult. And then the case cannot be heard the way the case was supposed to be heard, as the child will not testify, will be subjected to testify in court, in public court, other than the private, because now he or she is old. So the delays in court is causing a lot to the children.
So that's another important point, because you're telling me that sometimes these children go back to court 7 years later.
True.
So even when the people look at the person who's on the stand, it's not the same person who was abused.
Exactly.
All right, and then in terms of the parole system, what is the community's feeling about these offenders who are released on parole?
Community is not happy at all. Reason, some say that the same parolees end up committing the same crime again, or they were given a lenient sentence. There's this thing of suspended sentence.
Okay.
For instance, you are sentenced 5 years and then the 4 years is wholly suspended. That person spent only 1 year in prison and then he comes back and then he commits another crime again. So community is not happy at all with the parolees.
So even if they're released on parole, there's no real monitoring of them. They just come back to the communities and do the same thing. So the community then loses trust in the whole system.
True that.
Okay.
Some, they just come to sign. I don't see them monitoring them within the community. The parolees, they will make sure that I'm at home by the time I have to sign. And after that, they do go about doing their thing. There's no one who's monitoring them.
Okay. So let's go back to Tendai then. Tendai, what happens when there's a not guilty verdict? So in other words, you've gone through this whole process, you've given evidence, the child's given evidence, and this is someone who's either in the community or maybe a member of their family, and there's a not guilty verdict. What happens to the young people and families if there's a not guilty verdict?
If there is no not guilty in the case, it causes too much emotional stress, especially to the victims and their parents, because now they'll be living in fear of their lives. What will happen? They'll fear that maybe that perpetrator can harm them again because he was found not guilty.
Because then there's obviously no monitoring of that person. Look, there isn't even monitoring of the parolees, but there's not monitoring of someone who's not guilty because there's no reason to monitor them.
Yes.
So it's like the whole system that the child has been through just falls away.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Do either of you have any experience around DNA and DNA results and what's happening in the courts with those?
I'm not sure about that one. I don't know, Pearl.
I've heard that parents have to wait for a year for the DNA to result to come back. Remember, there's a case that we did look with while we were still doing what is it? The one that we returned to get, the one that was cancelled at court because of it was a family thing, where they say the court cannot get in between families. So the perpetrator was released, and then the DNA, it took some time to come back, but eventually the perpetrator was in prison.
I actually remember that case. That was when I was still supervising in Alex.
Yes,
now, what happened, that's actually an important point to raise, because what happened in that case was that this was actually the uncle of the child.
Yes.
And the person who was looking after the child, who was 5 at the time, and was the son of the grandmother.
Yes.
And the grandmother was looking after the child.
True.
And what happened there was that the court said we can mediate this, and he can get, he's not going to get any sentence. He can go home because the court does. So they mediated it. But the problem was he didn't admit guilt in court, only when he went to mediation and they said he could go free.
True.
Do I remember it correctly?
Yes, yes.
And then when we sent it back with the DNA, then he did actually get a sentence.
Yes.
So
True.
when the DNA is present, it does help.
Indeed. True advocacy, that's how it went back to court. It was through your advocacy that sent the case back to court. And then the DNA delayed. But eventually the guy was sentenced.
Okay. And that was obviously very traumatic for the child, because the person who's looking after the child has now asked the person who hurt her to be released and come and live back in the house with her.
Yes, they were staying in the same house. The only time he went to Eastern Cape is when the case went back to court. So they said he must run away so that he cannot be arrested.
Okay, all right. So that sort of has been a journey through the system. So any closing words for parents and children about how to look for support through this? Because this is a difficult system. How do we get parents and children to look for support through the system?
My wish is that every case that involves a child can be done swiftly. For instance, you cannot, a 6-year-old, You cannot make her or him wait for more than 2 years to get a sentence for a case. So if they can speed up the system, that will be a good justice for our children.
And your final words, Tendai.
Okay, I can say to parents of the victims, even though I feel as a social worker that the justice system is not victim-centric, the parents should just be patient. If they see that there's a case that needs to be opened, if a child is abused, they must keep on reporting, even though we know cases they drag in court, but they shouldn't. They should keep on reporting the cases, even though they take time to be heard in court.
And how do they explain that to their children? How would you suggest parents explain that delay to the children?
I think they must just sit down with their children and say, look, this is what happened. But it doesn't mean that if Uncle did this to you, yes, we reported a case. But remember, you are not the first one. You are not the first one. This thing hasn't been done to you firstly. So like there are also other people. So like the court will take time because sometimes they will be having a lot of cases ahead of them, so that the child will know that it won't be automatic to say you report a case today, then tomorrow they will be called into court.
Perfect. Thank you both very much for your time and also for your day-to-day commitment to these children, because we know we just launched the 16 Days of Activism with this particular episode, and our president has said that one of his 5-point plans is to make the system victim-centric. And what we know is that it's not victim-centric.
It is not victim-centric at all.
So the only buffer between the children and the system is you.
Yes.
Okay. So they ask us, why do we go into dark places? And we tell them because there are children there and children live there.
Those are places that they don't like.
Exactly. Right. So thank you very much for tuning in to the first of a 4-part episode. The next episode we are going to be dealing with babies, and in the following episodes we'll be looking at juvenile offenders, and finally we'll be looking at the fact that trauma takes lives. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you so
Pearl.
much, Luke,
Thanks,
for
Tina.
having us. Bye.
Bye-bye.